SpaceX has a lot of work to do preparing their Massey test site. That much is clear. Don't fret about the weight though. We just got a big hint as to how SpaceX might be able to static fire ships in the meantime. And it might be the wildest project Starbase has ever seen. Beyond that, there's a ton of other construction happening around Starbase to pave the way for a return to flight and to accelerate the future launch cadence of Starship, even if launches might be taking a brief pause. Howdy Tank Watchers, I'm Jack Beyer for NSF, and this is your Starbase Update, Anechoic Chamber Edition. As you probably saw in our latest Starbase update, we did a flyover just before the video was released. That means you got to see some of the shots from that flight, but not all of them. So this week, we want to dive deeper and give you some detailed analysis of what we could observe from the air. Let's start off with the Gigabay, and right off the bat, the obvious point. If you thought you understood how massive this building will be, take another look at these images and think again. The cleared area is incredibly large, even when compared to the already tall Megabay 1 sitting right next to it. Of course, the final footprint of the Gigabay might end up slightly smaller than the cleared area, but only slightly. In one corner of the construction site, you can even see where SpaceX has begun pile driving. All those small points are prep work for the massive foundation this building will need, and things are only going to speed up from here. The good news is that the Gigabay will have its doors facing the road, which means we'll be able to get a peek inside occasionally, but that also comes with a few downsides. This massive building will limit our view of the old ring yard, and we'll no longer be able to see the movement of barrels and other parts between buildings as clearly as we can now. Still, that just means flyovers are even more valuable now, and once again, we do expect to be able to catch some glimpses inside the Gigabay from time to time from the roadside, so we've got that going for us at least. Also visible in the flyover photos is the smaller Starfactory expansion at the back of the massive building, a structure we previously assumed would be an integrated thermal protection system bakery. However, that assumption now appears to be incorrect. The new building, which we first noticed about a week ago, is already receiving wall segments and portions of its roof structure. Based on its layout and the multiple visible offload bays, it now looks much more like a delivery offload area for incoming Starfactory trucks. Inside Starfactory, outfitting work continues. On Tuesday, a new work stand was rolled into the facility. It appears to have a dome-shaped structure with a diameter that looks to be close to 9 meters. This suggests it could be related to dome work, or possibly dome assembly or a dome sleeving stand for future ships or boosters. We'll likely learn more in time, but given the ongoing outfitting of the Starfactory for Starship Block 3, this equipment is probably tied to that effort. Next to Starfactory, the new apartment complex is also quickly taking shape. Foundation work has been completed, and the first segments of what appear to be walls are already going up. Of course, this complex is intended for SpaceX employees, so don't get your hopes up about snagging a room next to the Starfactory anytime soon. Speaking of residents and apartments, the city of Starbase sent a letter to its residents this week, marking just over 30 days since it officially became a city. In the update, city officials highlighted the adoption of 20 ordinances, the proposal of an operating budget, the launch of the official city website, and a commitment to constant, transparent communication with residents. Let's hope that bears out. The letter also once again touched on the ongoing rezoning process, which aims to update the city's zoning plan to meet the needs of an active spaceport city. Time will tell what the exact implications of this new zoning plan will be and what changes it'll bring to Starbase moving forward. We'll just have to wait and see. In our usual Nosecone parade, we can check in on the ships under construction in the Nosecone Hall in the Starfactory. Right now, we can clearly see ships 40, 41, 42, and even the very tip of ship 43 under construction inside that Nosecone Hall. The reason they're so visible is because they're positioned near the window facing Highway 4, making them pretty easy to film, at least compared to everything else in the Starfactory, which we have no visibility into. None of these ships have started receiving heat shield tiles or even the pins for those tiles yet, as Ship 39's Nosecone, which we'll talk about in a bit, is still occupying that workstation. Still, it's always worthwhile to check in on their progress from time to time. Next to all of this, there's also what appears to be a ship header tank, which could be for Ship 43 if it still needs one, or it could be for an even later ship, or it's just the same methane header tank that we've seen sitting there for, I don't know, weeks, months now? Let me know what you think in the comments. So yeah, this factory is deep into Block 3 production. It's really just a matter of when something will be ready for stacking, though I suspect a test tank of some kind will come first. Test tank 39.1, anybody? There also appears to be a ship aft section, which still features a lot of the vents we already see present on Block 2, which seemingly will also be present for Block 3. You cannot see the vents themselves yet, but you can see the cutouts where they will be in the future. In this picture, you can see Ship 38, the last ship of the Block 2 production run. Ship 37, the upcoming flight vehicle, is tucked more to the left here, making it a bit harder to observe. Since we last saw Ship 38, it looks like SpaceX has started closing some of the TPS gaps that were still visible back then. But there's still plenty of work to do on its heat shield. The good news is they now have time to get it done. So much time, in fact, that we even saw workers on Booster 12. Yes, that Booster 12. It looked like one worker was up at the top of the booster for quite some time. This could simply be new worker training, or someone inspecting the booster, or maybe it's something else. As long as it's not the beginning of the scrapping process for this historic flight vehicle. We've seen in the past that SpaceX hasn't been too kind to milestone vehicles in the Starship program, so it's possible. If they need the space, and with Booster 16 potentially moving to the rocket garden soon, and Booster 17 already in place, space is at a premium, as much as I hate to say it. Plus, Booster 18 isn't far from stacking either. Now, I don't expect SpaceX to scrap Booster 12. I think they'll keep it around. But ever since they scrapped SN15, whenever they start messing around with older hardware, I get nervous. It's time for our McGregor Minute. Every week, we shine a quick spotlight on SpaceX's McGregor, Texas engine test facility. You too can catch all the action on our 24/7 live stream. But if you don't have all week, here we go. This week at McGregor, one Raptor test stand appears to have been offline for quite a while. The Raptor horizontal test stand was last fired on June 13th. That test, if you remember, ended with a lot of fiery sparks from the engine. It's possible that the stand was damaged during the test, or at least required a longer downtime to investigate the issue, because nothing has happened there since. This is the only stand that remains to test Raptor 2, so this means SpaceX may have wrapped up the testing of the last of the Raptor 2 engines to be built, which is just wild to think about. There could be another reason for the pause, though. Earlier this year, SpaceX announced plans to retire this very test stand by the end of the year. Given the recent Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly, or RUD, on the stand, maybe SpaceX has moved up the decommissioning timeline, or maybe this test was a send-off test that was sparky by intention. We have seen such send-off tests in the past, like that wild 35 relights in a row test on the tripod. Supporting that idea, one of the propellant tanks has already been removed, so it doesn't look good for this stand's future. That doesn't mean things were quiet at McGregor this week, though. Many Raptor engines were tested on the south and vertical stands, along with 2 Falcon 9 second stages and several Merlin engines. Plus, another Falcon 9 booster was just raised vertical for testing, and a second one is ready to be tested once the first one clears. These are rumored to be boosters B1097 and B1098 respectively. And for the cherry on top, at the end of the week, we spotted another Raptor 3 engine rolling by our cameras, and its serial number is SN31. That's a new record for the highest serial number that we've observed so far. Hopefully that means that Raptor 3 is coming along nicely and will be ready to support Starship Block 3 when the time comes. In the flyover photos, we can also see progress on Pad 2, as SpaceX appears to be putting extra focus on getting this pad ready for Block 3 as quickly as possible. The flame trench itself is mostly in place, but what's interesting is that both edges of the trench remain open, with exposed rebar cages instead of concrete. Maybe SpaceX plans to install special panels at the ends to better direct the exhaust flow. It's definitely noticeable that both edges are unfinished. The most likely explanation here is that these edges will be tied into the surrounding concrete that's still to be poured around the flame trench. That work probably hasn't started yet because SpaceX still needs to access the area, and they haven't had time to pour the concrete there. At least, that's one theory. Around the pad, we can see many green lines marked on the ground. These indicate the distribution lines for the deluge system, which supplies water to various pad systems. There's one larger line that seems to feed water-cooled steel plates on top of the pad, while smaller lines branch out to the left and right sides, where water is also required. To the west of Pad West, the commodities... To the west of the pad, the commodities trench, which was previously open for pipe installation to the GSE bunker, is now being closed up. Most of the piping appears to be installed, with only a few sections still open. Additionally, the gaps in the nearby tank farm have been filled in nicely, and it looks like the main lines and other support piping are now continuously running from the tank farm to the GSE bunker. Between the launch mount and the flame trench walls, we can see that SpaceX is still working on permanently securing the launch mount to the walls, putting to rest any idea that it's designed to be quickly removable. These welding jobs have been going on for weeks now, so removing this massive mount would definitely take some time. Now, it's not necessarily impossible to remove, but it would be a pretty tough job to take apart again. On Tuesday, SpaceX carried out further commissioning of the orbital tank farm. Many components of the farm got frosty and began venting, which suggested that SpaceX was making sure that all their previously installed equipment and systems were up to spec and functioning as expected. This kind of testing isn't new. It's one of the reasons SpaceX has been able to carry out so many Starship flights without major tank farm issues. Knowing your hardware and thoroughly testing it during downtime helps prevent problems when it really counts. Hey, when you don't test your GSE a lot, you get things like Delta IV Heavy and Delta IV Medium, which were notorious for GSE-related scrubs. Sorry, Adrian. No, I'm not. During this test, the road remained open, which indicates the commissioning was likely done using nitrogen instead of highly flammable methane or oxygen. This also suggests that no significant pressure was built up in parts of the tank farm, as higher pressures would typically require more of a safety margin. Still, it was a solid shakedown nonetheless. And I guess that's pretty obvious since workers were just a few meters away from the tank farm during this test, continuing construction on berms and walls nearby. Technically, this next part isn't directly related to Pad 2, but it's part of the overall launch pad work, so now's a good time to mention it. At the Sanchez storage lot, a water-cooled ridge for another flame bucket was spotted. The question is, which pad is this for? There are a couple of possibilities here. Option 1, SpaceX is already preparing for a rapid revamp of Pad 1 once Pad 2 is fully operational, and this ridge is part of the equipment needed to build a similar flame trench at Pad 1. Option 2 is that it's meant for Launch Complex 39A. Over the past few weeks, we've seen a lot of activity at 39A, and SpaceX has a history of building parts for one site at a different location. For example, the Starship tower at Pad 2 in Starbase was constructed at the Cape because facilities were still available there. And option 3, I guess, would be that it's somehow related to Pad 2 at Starbase? I don't know. What do you think? 39A, Pad 1, or Pad 2? Sometimes we fly over SpaceX facilities to spot new developments, but other times we just get lucky when they show things on live streams. This week, the Axiom 4 crew launched from Launch Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And interestingly, during the bright illuminated liftoff shots, we got a prime view of the Starship launch pad construction underway there. We could see that the tanks recently delivered to the Cape are already installed at the pad. At the very top, you can spot the cryo tanks from that delivery. And in the middle, the water deluge tanks are also visible. Just like Pad 2 and Starbase, these tanks are located behind the tower. You can also clearly see the giant flame trench taking shape at the Starship pad, which looks very similar to the design at Starbase's Pad 2. The bathtub shape with sloped ends is now very apparent. So this pad isn't far behind in construction compared to Pad 2 and Starbase. It will probably need a few more months than Pad 2, but honestly, seeing this, a launch from the Cape in 2026, doesn't seem as far-fetched as some might think. On the road to Block 3, one critical testing item has been, and remains, Booster Test Tank 18.1. This small test tank was present during the Ship 36 explosion, which raised some interesting questions. The first is whether or not it took any damage, and honestly, the answer might be no. Although it looked close to the fireball in the live stream thanks to foreshortening from telephoto lenses, the tank is actually located on the opposite side of Massey's. Plus, this wasn't technically an explosion, but more of a massive fireball or deflagration. So there wasn't a lot of high-speed debris flying around Massey's. Structurally, the test article looks, and most likely is, fine. That said, there are other factors to consider here. The fire caused significant damage to the tank farm at the Massey outpost, so we may have to wait until control of the tank farm is fully restored before any further testing on 18.1 can resume, at least on the cryo side. This will depend on what testing was still planned for the tank, but for now, it seems mostly intact, just a little bit delayed. Looking at the Massey map, the good news is that the nitrogen tank farm is the furthest away from the fireball, located behind even the test tank itself, and it didn't sustain major damage from the Ship 36 mishap. So the chances that testing can proceed as planned, and soon, aren't too low. Honestly, my number one takeaway from seeing Massey from the air on Monday was that it didn't really look that bad. I mean, yeah, it's not great, but it's not that bad. At least from what we can see from the air. On Tuesday, workers were spotted around Booster 18.1, likely conducting inspections ahead of the next round of testing. With all 78 pistons apparently hooked up to the test article now, this upcoming test is expected to put flight-like stress on the vehicle's welds as they evaluate its structural integrity. Speaking of upcoming vehicles, we're still tracking the construction of the Ship 39 Nosecone inside the Starfactory. We've covered the other Nosecones before in this episode, but now it's time to focus on the most interesting one, the first Block 3 ship's Nosecone, which has been under construction for some time. However, it's been in a relatively unchanged state for several weeks. The pins for the TPS installation are already in place, but the ablative material and the tiles have not been applied yet. The Nosecone remains fully bare. There are a few possible reasons for this. The obvious one is that they might simply be a bit behind schedule, and the Nosecone still needs more time. But with Block 3, there could be process changes. SpaceX might have decided to install the thermal protection system after stacking the ship. That would mean that Ship 39 gets stacked first, with the heat shield then installed afterward. But to be honest, I don't really expect that. It could also just be that SpaceX is waiting for Block 2 heat shield re-entry data before committing to a particular design on Block 3. If it's the former approach, it might help prevent tile damage during stacking, but it raises questions about the timeline. How quickly can they finish the heat shield if they wait? Either way, Ship 39 will hopefully start stacking soon and give us a clearer picture of the process. Also, while the next Starship flight might still be a way off, I just want to remind you that we still have some Flight 9 patches left in the shop, and once they're gone, they're gone. So if you're missing this one from your collection, now is the time to grab it. And if you already have it, but you want it on a sweet shirt or anything else like a mug or what have you, you can get it like that too. Also, for anyone who loves Starship, our Raptor Thrust Collection shirt is always a favorite. Get these epic designs today at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Okay, it's time for another classic SpaceX Confuse the Media moment. Remember last week when they looked like they were about to put the hot staging ring on the booster for the next flight, but then rolled it back after the ship went boom? Well, guess what? The hot staging ring is back. It rolled from the Starfactory to Gigabay 1 on Tuesday. So naturally, the only explanation is that flight is 100% back on track and they'll be flying very soon, right? Well, no. The most likely explanation is that they're moving the next flight-ready booster to the rocket garden, so as soon as any ship is ready, they can quickly move it to the launch site, stack it, and fly. They need space in Gigabay 1 to work on Booster 17 ahead of engine testing, and maybe to prepare Booster 18 as well. And who knows, maybe even Booster 19 soon. Either way, it makes sense to finish this booster completely, put a crown on it, call it a day. So no, this probably doesn't mean an imminent flight, unfortunately. The big question is, which vehicles will fly next? On the booster side, Booster 15-2, Booster 16, and Booster 17 are all available for the next 2 flights, so one of the 3 will miss out on a second test. Now that only 2 Block 2 flights remain, will they skip Ship 15 again? Or maybe they'll skip 17. It'll be interesting to see for sure. On the ship side, it's a bit clearer. It looks like it'll either be Ship 37 if they continue with Block 2 vehicles, which is seeming more and more likely, or Ship 39 if they move on to Block 3. Ship 37 has started receiving its engines recently and is now waiting for Massey's to fully come back online before finishing its ground testing campaign. Alongside that, tanks are being moved from the production site over to the Sanchez lot. Some might be wondering if this is part of a tank redistribution to prepare Sanchez for repairs at Massey's, but right now Massey's isn't ready for testing or even repairs. It's still in cleanup mode. But once that's sorted, SpaceX will likely set up a temporary system to get vehicles ready for testing again, since otherwise, Massey's downtime would become a major bottleneck. On Thursday, Jerry once again flew his drone to check on the current status of the Massey outpost. You can clearly see how the bushes and trees around Massey's dried out during the fire. There's a noticeable brown ring of vegetation around the area where the fire was active for several hours. Other than that, it doesn't look like SpaceX has started working on the stand itself yet, as it's still covered with steel debris and burned components in this image. So you might be wondering why, so late in the video where we cover the big highlights of the week, we're showing a ship stand moving down Highway 4 toward the launch site. Well, here's the thing. There's currently no ship at the launch site, and we've been discussing what this could mean for a while in our writer's room. Honestly, there's only one really plausible explanation here, and that is that SpaceX is exploring the option of building an adapter to static fire ships on the orbital launch mount. Yeah, you heard that right. At night, between Friday and Saturday, SpaceX rolled a ship work stand to the launch site. We know Massey's will need a long repair, and we also know SpaceX hates long stand-downs. Plus, the next Mars transfer window is in like a year and change. So, is this their way of cutting down that downtime? Let's imagine they really are going for this somewhat crazy idea. With the ship stand, they already have the 6 clamps needed to secure the ship, so that's covered. Now, if they weld or build a mechanism to connect the stand to the orbital launch mount somehow, they'd basically have a working adapter. They could hook the stand directly to steel beams or the orbital launch mount itself. And here's the kicker. We also know there's still a ship QD, quick disconnect, plate sitting at Sanchez. And the one at Massey's currently used for ship cryo testing could become free once Ship 38 finishes its cryo-proofing. So in theory, they have all the components they'd need already on hand. They just need to attach flex hoses to or otherwise modify the booster quick disconnect to connect to the ship quick disconnect, and boom, you can static fire a ship on the orbital launch mount. Well, hopefully not boom, but you get it. Honestly, this might actually be happening. We're not making this up. We've actively tried to find reasons why it wouldn't be the case, but we just keep coming back here. This would also allow them to rebuild the ship's static fire area at Massey's for version 3 of the ship and not waste time with version 2 specific hardware there. We're not saying it will happen for certain, but it could. And it's a very SpaceX-like solution to minimize stand-down time. It's a simple and elegant solution, and it's totally a move fast and break things or McGyver-style fix. I can't wait to see where they're going with this, and thanks to SpaceX for constantly keeping Starbase interesting to us. Let us know in the comments below if you think we're on the right track or totally off base with this theory. Either way, we think it's a real possibility and we're all very excited about it. And we're all very excited if it does happen because that means we're going to get to the next Starship launch that much sooner. All right, I guess I should probably address the room the elephant is in. I am here at Brigham Young University at their acoustics department in an anechoic chamber because Dr. Kent Gee invited me down here because we both happen to go to the Bole test. You all complain so much in the comments about how much I yell when I record out in the dunes. Never say we don't listen to the comments and we don't listen to feedback. Thanks for watching Starbase Update, and as always, don't forget, be excellent to each other.